My very special guest today is the Reverend Ron Jones, a man who normally occupies the seat that I'm sitting in as interviewer. But over the past couple of programs, I've been speaking to him about his rich life and experience as a Christian minister. Ron, it's an absolute joy to be with you again today.
Thanks for asking me on your program.
Thank you. Now, Ron, you've been a minister of a number of large churches over the years. You've held the highest office in your denomination, and you've preached internationally. But I know that your family plays a very large part and has a high priority in all that you do. We didn't get too much chance last time when we were together to talk about the importance of your family. Share a little bit about what that means to you in ministry.
Can I begin by saying what I believe the important place the family has in today's society?
Yeah.
Although every effort is being made from all quarters to try and pare it down and break it up. And I was thinking just this morning of a marvelous verse. I think it's in Psalm 68, which says, "He hath set the solitary in families." And so I'd like to begin by saying it wasn't Moses' idea.
Yeah, that's right.
It wasn't even Solomon's idea with all his wisdom. The family was God's idea. And the family begins to break up when God's taken out of the reckoning.
Yeah.
I thank God for my family. I talked a little bit how I started courting, I think, Catherine, getting her to peel potatoes. But I'll tell you, I've said it many times before, that I'm sure I wouldn't have accomplished whatever might have been accomplished had it not been for her support.
Wonderful.
And when I was president first time, she gave me a picture with some words on.
Yeah.
And I'll read them.
Please.
I believe they sum up all that she meant to me.
Wonderful.
And all that she wanted to be to me. It simply goes like this: I will support you in all you do. I will help you in all you need. I will share with you in all your experiences. I will encourage you in all you try. I will understand you in all that is in your heart. And I will love you in all that you are.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and that really sums up what Kath was to me and what I believe I was to her.
How many years were you married altogether?
54
years.
And we were in the work of God together from the very time we got married.
Would you have seen herself just in a supportive role, or did you feel that she had a ministry that complemented yours alongside you?
She definitely had a ministry and was loved by people, not only for her ministry but for herself.
Yes.
And it was tremendous. And then of course I have 3 girls.
Yeah, tell us about the 3 girls.
Yeah, there's Glenys and Rhiannon and Elenid. But I tell you, talking about family, I did a series of programs on Terry Wogan's Pause for Thought thing, and he called it Bringing Up Dad. And it was things that the kids had said to me.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you one?
Yes.
That taught me the importance of example. Our Rhiannon was just about 7 years of age, and she was born slightly spastic.
Yeah.
And she and I had a difference of opinion, so I sent her to bed. And she was a little bit slow going up the stairs, so I sort of gave her a tap or two to help her up. And she started to cry. And she, "Forgive me, Dad, I won't do it again." And she really turned it on. And I said, "I don't care, Rhiannon, I'm not forgiving you anymore." And then eventually she said, "Jesus said you had to do it 70 times 7, and you haven't done it that many yet." And, I said, "I don't care." It was very bad of me. I said, "I don't care, Rhiannon, I'm through." And then came the one below the belt, really. She said, "All right, if it's like that, I'll go down the city temple and I'll tell them that you preach one thing down there and do another thing at home." And in a couple of minutes flat, she was downstairs with beans and chips.
Wow, yeah.
I learned a lesson then.
Yes, indeed.
The power of example.
Wonderful.
And so I'm grateful to God for the wonderful wife that he gave me.
Yes.
And for the 3 super daughters that I got. Do you know, since Kath went to be with the Lord, they ring me every day, sometimes twice, just to say how I am. And I'm ever so glad that God designed the family.
It's lovely.
And the devil is doing his utmost to destroy it.
Well, it's very clear from what you said that example has worked within the family. Because we hear the devotion that they have towards you and the gratitude that they have towards the way that you and Kath have brought them up in the ways of the Lord. Now, you're looking well today and you're keeping fit, but there have been times, haven't there, over the years when you've been greatly challenged health-wise. And there was some doubt at one point whether you'd be able to continue any ministry. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was during the year of the Vumba crisis, which we talked about
Yes.
last time, when our missionaries were massacred in Rhodesia and 4 of the children. And it was at that particular time, it was whilst I was General Superintendent, that I had this severe heart attack. And they rushed me into the Cheltenham Hospital at around midnight one evening. And I was in for probably 2.5 weeks, went out and had to go back in and out and back in. And I still remember the day when the doctor sat at the foot of my bed and he said to me, I'm talking about 25 years ago now,
Yeah.
he said to me, Mr. Jones, you're going to have to face the fact that you will never ever preach again. That was 25 years ago. And another doctor in the practice took my wife, Kath, aside and said to her, you know, Mrs. Jones, your husband is living on borrowed time. And quite often I say now the borrowed bit was better than all the bit before. But that was the thing. And I can tell you, and you would understand this, I was absolutely shattered. That was the doctor's verdict on that day. Now, when we talked about my call to the ministry, I told you I based it on a verse of scripture or a couple of verses from Isaiah 41, verse 9 and 10. You are my servant, and so on, and I've called you. And I had the doctor's verdict one day. And the very next day, I had a letter from Guyana, of all places, from a marvellous lady there who had started an Elim work. They called her Sister Tempau. We just made contact with each other at Christmas time, exchanged Christmas cards. And she wrote to me and she said this, Dear Brother Jones, I just am sending you a scripture to encourage you. And it was Isaiah 41, 9 and 10. You are my servant, I've called you. I will support you and uphold you with my righteous right hand. And as if that was not enough, the very next day I had a letter from one of our young Elim ministers in Elim. He was in Blackpool. And he wrote something like this, Dear Pastor Jones, you have been an encouragement, and I just feel the Lord wants me to be an encouragement to you. And it was exactly the same scripture, a different version.
Yeah.
But the same
You see,
scripture.
that's remarkable because, I mean, you've ministered to thousands of people, many thousands of people over the years. Then you've received help from the scriptures. But there have been times, haven't there, when at a critical moment someone has brought a word of the Lord to you in a prophetic sense. I'm thinking, I remember some time ago, did you want to tell me about something that happened in Zurich on one occasion when 2 men approached you that you didn't know?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, what was that?
On that thing that we've just spoken about,
Yeah.
can I take another minute
Yeah.
or two? A number of years after that, I was conducting a campaign in Ireland, Northern Ireland, and they had to rush me into hospital with heart problem partway through the campaign. And on the Friday night, a group of people came to visit me in hospital from the church. And a couple of ladies brought me a card. They brought me various things. A couple of ladies brought me a card, and on the card was exactly that same scripture.
Wow.
Absolutely. And when Kath passed away, went to be with the Lord a little while ago, we had hundreds of cards of appreciation of a ministry and so on, and sympathy. But there was one card that had neither on. All it had in handwriting was that same verse,
Remarkable.
Isaiah 41, 9 and 10. So the Lord has spoken
That is
to me.
wonderful.
The story of the Zurich thing. I was preaching at the World Pentecostal Conference in Zurich. I don't know, might have been about 15 years ago, I'm not quite sure. And I was in a bad shape. I was on 2 sticks.
Yeah.
And struggling around. And I told them at my church that I'd have to finish at the end of the year because I couldn't even walk up the steps at the front.
Yeah.
And I preached on the Saturday night on the second coming through an interpreter. And I was ready to just get in a taxi and go back to the hotel. Kath was with me, and I was absolutely worn out. And a couple of fellas came up to me that I'd never seen before, and they said, "We have a word from the Lord for you." You know, and to be honest, it set the alarm bells ringing. I thought, the Lord must appreciate the state I'm in, and He could have spoken to me direct. And so to be honest, if I'm absolutely honest about it, I didn't want to bother.
No.
But out of courtesy, I stood. And the fellow said to me, "The Lord wants you to know that in the years that lie ahead, you will reach more people with the gospel than you ever have before in all your ministry." Which I thought was absolutely crackpot, crazy as could be, because I was just over 70 years of age, on 2 sticks, going back to my church to tell them that I'd have to finish at the end of the year. I was in such a bad way. And then there was this thing. And to be honest, I took it with a pinch of salt.
Yes.
I'd never heard of UCB radio. I'd never heard of the Vision Channel or anything of that nature. And yet, in the last number of years, last few years, I've done probably close on 70 interviews for the Vision Channel and a series of Bible studies for the Vision Channel. And it now goes out on Sky Digital, 202 by the way.
Yeah, put a plug in there.
Every Saturday morning.
Lovely. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, you've ministered through various aspects of media, but you've also ministered in some strange places around the world, haven't you?
Yeah.
What's some of the strangest places you've ever ministered in, Ron?
I found Guyana quite intriguing. I learned some lessons in Guyana. It was in Guyana I met Cameron. We had a missionary there, John McInnes, who I believe was a terrific fellow, terrific man of God, and his wife, a lovely lady. And I went out there for a month, and he took me to the leper colony in Mahaica. And I met 2 people there who made an impact upon me. One of them was Cameron. And when I looked at Cameron, he had no hands. All he had was stumps. He had no fingers, I meant. Only stumps.
Yeah.
And his mouth was all distorted, and his face and the skin was deeply pitted. To be honest, he looked a mess, and he looked ugly, really. And when I looked up higher, he had no eyes. All he had was empty sockets. And we went to the chapel in the mission station for a service. And John McInnes said, "Cameron is going to give us a word of testimony, thanking God for his goodness." And I thought to myself, what on earth has this fellow got to thank God for? And I looked at him. And I've never forgotten Cameron standing up as best he could. And the previous Sunday he had been baptized in one of the dirty rivers not far from the leper colony. And he said, "I have no hands to hold with, I have no eyes to see with, but I thank God I'm anchored to the rock."
Wonderful.
You know?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and a little later on, John said, "Cameron is going to sing for us." And I thought to myself, what's he going to sing about? What's he got to sing about anyway? And again he stood up, and there was no music accompaniment. and he just started to sing. And he sang a song that I'd heard great gospel singers sing prior to that. And in America I'd heard choirs sing, but never quite like this. And I'm not ashamed to say that it moved me to tears, really. And he started to sing, he touched me. He touched me, and all the joy that fills my soul. Something happened, and now I know he touched me and made me whole.
Wow.
And I wept, and I felt humbled, and I felt convicted about my own lack of gratitude to God for all the things that I enjoyed, and that made an impact upon me. And then there was another lady. Do you remember the old Elim Evangel?
Yes, I do.
Well, John McInnes used to take them to the leper colony,
Yes.
and they were a year old. People used to send him, and it was the same date, but the previous 12 months. And we went into one ward, and there was no one in the ward. I couldn't see anyone. But we walked to the end of the ward, and there was a lady with no legs. She was just on stumps. And she was making a mat. And she had a needle in her mouth. All she had was stumps there, and she had this needle in her mouth. And John McInnes said to her, I brought you your evangel. And we know, you and I know, that evangel means good news.
Yes.
And for us, it's the good news of the gospel.
Yeah.
And I've never forgotten this. He said, Hannah, do you want your evangel? And I see those hands from this lady just squatted on stumps, reaching up and catching out of the evangel. And I thought at that moment of the leprosy of sin that's gripped so many lives, and that the only answer really is the good news of the gospel, the evangel. And those two pictures live with me as far as Guyana is concerned.
Well, it's been a long ministry and a worldwide ministry. It's taken you to Ghana, one side, but over to Russia as well, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed the 8 days we had in Russia. I was invited to go as padre of a band from a large Pentecostal church in Oslo. They had a brass band of about 50. So it was a large party of us went, and we landed in what was then Leningrad.
Yes.
And we started, we arrived on the Saturday night. We started the next day with 3 services, one in a huge cathedral. But we took, and we had the capacity because of the brass band cases. We took 8,000 Gospels of John in Russian and about 140 Bibles. And we took thousands of tea bags and bars of soap and tights for the ladies and chewing gum for the kids and all the rest of it. And I reckon that in the course of that week, I had the privilege, through an interpreter, of preaching to probably between 8,000 and 9,000 people. Not that I was the attraction, it was the brass band that was the attraction, really. And I remember the last weekend we were in what was then called Leningrad. And we had a great open-air service on the Saturday night in Leningrad Square, right under the statue of Leningrad. And there were hundreds of people who came. And then at the end, we had 2 coaches because of the instruments, and we had to stay in different places. And this particular Saturday night, Kath and I got in one of the coaches, and we taken, and eventually about 1:30 in the early hours of the morning, they said, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, this is your place. So we got off, and we went, this high-rise flats, looked pretty filthy, and we went into an apartment. There was nobody else there. Nobody else. But it was spotlessly clean. And we went to bed, and about 6 o'clock the next morning, there was the turning of keys in the lock, and we wondered what on earth could be happening. And a lady and a man came in. We just heard them talking. We never saw them. And the same thing happened the next morning, except it was only the lady. We were leaving on the Monday morning, and the lady came in. And Kath was making a cup of tea, and this lady stopped her. We couldn't speak Russian. She couldn't speak English. And she demanded that she somehow or other made the tea for us.
Yeah.
So she got a little tin of tea out and warmed the teapot and put the tea in and made the tea. She wanted us to have her tea. And then she brought us our breakfast. And out of a cupboard she got a bunch of 6 radish. And Kath had 3 and I had 3. And it's the first and only time that I've had radish for breakfast.
Ration tea.
But I'll tell you,
Yes.
it was moving. I know you've had experiences like that.
It was a great sacrifice for her, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To give her that.
It was terrific.
And you talk about learning those lessons in that have affected you in Guyana and Russia and people's incredible care. What are the other lessons that over the years remain with you now that you felt, well, God spoke to me through a certain situation, or something has been spoken into my life through just the long experience, Ron,
Yeah.
that you would want to pass on to others who are watching today?
I think one thing that I've proved throughout the years, in all the different circumstances of life, the truth of that scripture, I think it's 1 Corinthians 9, God is faithful. I think that is an important fact. Another thing that I believe has been important to me, the assurance of God's call, I believe, is vital. You will have proved that yourself. The assurance of God's call when you're going through a difficult time. Another thing that I learned is that it's folly to make quick judgments
Right.
on people. I remember a young fella coming into the temple one night and coming to the front and making a decision. And he's able to tell me now what I preached on that night. He said I preached on the slain lamb. But anyway, I went home. Kath had gone home because we had the 2 girls then. And Kath went home. When I got home, she said to me, how did you get on with that young man? So I said, oh, all right. But I don't think he'll make much. And that young man is now the minister of quite a flourishing church in Keynsham.
Oh, well.
And I was completely wrong in my quick assessment of the situation. So I learned that sometimes the quick decisions that we make are not always the right ones. And ironically, it was I who asked him to go to that church eventually.
In the first place.
So that was something else that I learned. I also have learned the importance of example. There are certain things that example with Rhiannon, for instance, the importance of example. There are certain things that I avoid doing. You know, people will say to me that in the Hawthorne sometimes, we never see you drinking or anything like that. I know this could be a touchy subject, but we never see you. And they say, well, I have to be honest with them and say, well, it's just a case of example. I might be able to handle it, but a young fella might not be. And if he thinks I can do it, he might very well think, well, it's okay for him to do it, and he's not able to handle it. And it's just something that I feel I wouldn't want to be responsible for anybody that might end up being an alcoholic. And the importance of example I've learned. And then the importance of my personal relationship with Christ. You know, church life, and particularly your position in it, is absolutely hectic. Programs to be planned, buildings to be thought about, a host of things. And if we're not very careful, we can lose out in our personal relationship and our personal walk with God. And I remember the scripture, I think it's Song of Solomon, the very first chapter, where the fellow says, I was put in charge of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. And I think that is an important factor for us all.
Yeah.
Really.
And so we're almost returning as we come in a moment towards the end of the programme. We're actually going back to where we began, the importance of the family, both as the unit that God has chosen, in which something that's real is birthed in the home, and then from the home affects the life of the church. And then, of course, the whole nation. That's
right.
part of God's purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, it is part of God's purpose.
Wow.
I went into the market in Georgetown. All the
Yes.
stalls were crowded together, and there was a little lady there, and all she had on her stall were pins and needles
Yes.
and cotton.
Yes.
So I began to speak to her. I said, how's business today? Well, she said, it's not very good today. And then she used this phrase, every day is fishing day, but every day is not catching day. And I think that's a good lesson for us as far as evangelism is
That is a great
concerned. It?
that is a great story, because we're sowing, but we're not reaping every day.
No, that's right. But
And
we've got to sow every day.
Ron, you've had an opportunity over the years to sow, and you've sown not only into the gospel and into the kingdom, but also, I know, into many people's lives that you've touched and changed. And it's great to know that ministry that you have is continuing. And so, Ron, as we come to a close, give me something in just a sentence that would sum up your ministry in a nutshell.
Dying for me was the greatest thing he could do. Living for him is the least that I can do.
That's beautiful. And what a way to close. Thank you for being my guest today. God bless you, Ron Jones. We've covered a large area in the programme today. In one moment, we've been in Guyana, in a leper colony, and learnt lessons there. Another moment, seeing someone sacrifice in Russia. And then listening to Ron Jones as he shared of that rich ministry over the years. And even in sickness, realizing that God is able to bring him through. And right where you are, I hope you're encouraged today to know whatever challenges you're facing, God is able to work his purpose through your life. May God bless you today and use you for his kingdom.